Greetings, everybody. Curtis here. I'm going to run by briefly my process for shooting star trails. It's very similar to shooting a Milky Way, although it's a little bit longer of a commitment. When I'm shooting Milky Way anyway, it's around 20 seconds to 30 seconds. Star trails, when I first started out, they were typically around 45 minutes, but I realized I really wanted a longer circle, if you will. So right now I'm shooting about 3.5 hours. And that really is a limit for my Nikon, because that's how long the battery lasts. Now there is external batteries you can buy, but that's another subject. Big piece of equipment that you'll need versus a Milky Way is an intervalometer, and that just is a cable connects to your camera. What that does is control the time and the time in between that you're taking an exposure. Very typically I'm using a 5-minute exposure. The cameras, as robust and as quick as they are, need a few seconds to write that information before they take the next one. So you want to give it that time where it's not mucking up that camera's exposure. So I typically use a 5-minute exposure, rest for 6 seconds, do another 5-minute exposure, on for probably 36 separate exposures. You will then stack all those, I use Photoshop in my Mac. Another piece of equipment I would not want to be without are hand warmers, and you wrap those around the lens. Typically at night things cool down and you want to be able to keep that lens nice and clear away from humidity. The environment is very similar with the Milky Way. You want away from light pollution. Unlike the Milky Way, if you want the circle in your composition, you're stuck with, in the northern hemisphere at least, shooting towards Polaris. You want to find the northern star. I find that fairly quickly since I've been doing it for a few years now, but to enhance that, to make it even quicker, I use an app on my phone. It's called Photopills. It not only shows me where the northern star is, it shows me the rotation. It's a lot of information that's really very handy. I've only scratched the surface on that, but it will show you, when the Milky Way is going to come up and what position. So highly recommend that app on the phone. Again, with the Milky Way, you want a sturdy tripod. Your lens selection typically is the same. I'm using a 14mm or a 15mm. So let's jump into it. Let's go to the Keweenaw Peninsula, which is in Upper Michigan, and we'll talk more about my specific technique. See you there.
Greetings, Cape Fear camera members. Curtis here. I'm on the shore of Upper Peninsula in Michigan, in the Keweenaw Peninsula. It's as far north as you can get in Michigan, and why I come here is you got some really nice dark skies. That's a key component when you're shooting star trails or the Milky Way shots. Kate gave a good primer on how to shoot the Milky Way. I'm going to go through how I shoot star trails. Most of the equipment's the same. There's a few things that are different for me. I do not use a cable release when I'm shooting Milky Ways, but I use intervalometer when I'm shooting star trails. And what that does is that controls the time on my camera. You shoot it on manual, obviously, and I shoot it on bulb. I set my intervalometer to 5 minutes. There's a rest period that you want to set next. I set that to 6 seconds, and then I tell it how many exposures I'm going to take. And generally in a night, if I'm doing 3.5 hours, I'm going to run it at least 34 different 5-minute exposures, maybe more. It depends on how long my battery lasts. So again, very important, have a fresh battery on your camera. The next thing that's very important, you might not think about it at first when you're shooting Milky Way, you don't really need to use that, is you need to get yourself some hand warmers. And why you're doing that is not just for you, although if it's cold you can use them, is you want to wrap a hand warmer around your lens. In the beginning, I just used gaffer's tape, taped it around the lens, and you're good to go. Barbara Snyder gave me a beautiful little hand-sewn device that actually holds the hand warmer, little Velcro around the lens, and that's been the perfect gift. Thank you, Barb. I use it all the time when I'm shooting star trails. They do even make devices that are electronic, that you can hook up to a battery source, but I don't like to carry more batteries than I need for something that I'm just going to use on a rare occasion. So I tend to use hand warmers all the time. My camera is a Nikon D850, at least for now. It shoots really nice images late at night. I'm going to use a wide angle. Typically I use a 14mm Rokinon, or lately I've been really digging this Irix camera. It's a 15mm. Why I like that is it's actually a little bit wider, 2.4. You need to focus on infinity, and it has a lock on infinity. That's a really important part of the technique when you're shooting Milky Way or star trails, is you want to get that infinity quickly and you want it locked. On my Rokinon camera, on the lens, excuse me, I actually tape it so it does not move. I'm typically just using that lens for star trails or Milky Way, so I'm not really focusing very close. I'm focusing more at infinity. So I tape it, I know I'm good to go. I don't have to worry about whether it's going to be in focus or not. Do I check it? Yeah, I'm always going to check, you know, my first exposure especially. So my first startup is I set my camera exactly how I'm going to do a Milky Way. Typically I'm using ISO 1600, maybe pushing it to 3200. I'm going to do 30 seconds because I want to test the exposure and also see where about I'm going to angle my lens. I change my white balance. You've got controls in most cameras to do that. It's a Kelvin number. During the day I use Kelvin 5800. At night I push it down to 3800 or 3500, depending on how I feel I want. You know, you look at the image, and if it's too warm or too blue, you can change that. Okay, so again, you take that first exposure. Okay, that 30-second exposure worked out perfectly. So now I want to switch everything over to my star trails. By the way, I'm shooting JPEG and RAW. Some of you, Jay, talking to you, I know shoot just JPEG. I like the advantage of shooting RAW in case something really I need to stretch it, and there's just a safety factor in shooting RAW. I shoot both. After 30 seconds, I can look at it. Perfect. Now, from there, on manual, I'm putting my camera on bulb. That's when the intervalometer is going to take over. On bulb, it's going to set the whatever you want. If you want 5 minutes, you want 3 minutes, you want 4, it's up to you. For me, I don't know why I use 5 minutes, but it's a good amount of time where when I look at that first 5-minute exposure, I can actually see part of that shift of the circle. So that tells me in my composition, well, maybe I need to move here a little bit more to make that more dramatic, or maybe I need to move there. So we're going to take a first 5-minute exposure. You need to change some settings. You were just at the Milky Way setting. Now we need to do the star trail setting. So what I do is I just use math. Basically, if I'm at 2.8, then at 4, instead of 30 seconds, it's a minute. At 5.6, now instead of a minute, it's 2 minutes. At f8, it's going to be 4 minutes. And then I drop the ISO down a little bit, and it squeaks in there about 5 minutes. Sounds a little goofy. This is just my technique. So let's try that first one, and we'll go from there. Okay, that exposure worked great. I can't say that it does every time, but most of the time the math works out perfectly. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn all the lights off, going to sit back and then just hang out for 3.5 hours. That's probably the most difficult part of taking a star trail versus a Milky Way. In a Milky Way, you're kind of done quickly and you can go on to another exposure, another composition. With this, you're really setting up that commitment to take a long exposure, 3.5 hours. So part of the way I relax during this period, settle my nerves, if you will, is I bring along my iPhone and I have a playlist, and I just hit that night playlist, and that just really gets me grooving. It's one of the best concerts when you're looking up at the sky, to me, that I've ever been at. So yeah, let's get started, and then we'll bring all this into the studio, and we'll talk about the studio technique I use to take all these images and flatten them and create that nice circle. Let's go. Meet you on the other side.